I was literally in my kitchen reading the script. My mom was cooking dinner and I was on the edge of my seat and my mom had read it before me and I'm like, "Mom, what is happening? What is going on?" And she wouldn't say a word. She just said, "Just finish it." So I was forced to read it very fast, but I just love that not only is this story entertaining, but it does have a female protagonist at the center of it trying to save herself and get out of these circumstances where we usually see movies and you have to rely on a person or a male figure to help you out, but she's really just betting it all on herself and really trying to get herself out of these situations. And I love that she's super duper smart. And even though she does have her moment, she does try to find the light in the darkness. So I was just geeked when I finished reading the script. Miss Elizabeth is great. Even though she does carry a lot of heavy scenes and it is very emotional for her, I'm so amazed how she's able to just turn that off and she's really able to separate herself from the character. And even though she embodies Cecilia so well, and she's just a big jokester and we love to joke around and talk about food and fashion shows. So she's great to work with.
Emily and Cecilia's relationship at the start of the movie is that kind of thing where no matter what happens, when your sister says they need you, you show up. And you do so with full commitment. And that's what happens at the start of the movie, regardless of any kind of past arguments or past tension. She shows up and she is Cecilia's kind of knight on a white horse. And beyond that, they then have to work together in terms of whether or not Emily believes what Cecilia's going through. I think it's hard to leave a bully. I think that's why it's hard for Cecilia to leave Adrian. I think most people have either been in a situation like this or they know someone who has. Control can come in so many forms in terms of physical and mental and emotional and just general manipulation. They can expect the unexpected. They can expect a really good story and they can expect a strong female lead. They can expect a real sophistication of storytelling. And also they can expect some of the standard fail-safe tropes that, you know, the sudden kind of freak-outs that we love.
He does have an insight into writing these strong female protagonists. So it certainly didn't surprise me that his take was a kind of a female perspective of the Invisible Man. But it is interesting because I think when you talk about the making of the Invisible Man, people automatically assume that the Invisible Man is the lead and the star of it, where it's actually Cecilia and it's Elisabeth Moss. And again, I think that's part of his exciting original take, that he's kind of flipped the focus and the perspective of this character into a really strong woman, and he writes her beautifully. For someone like Oliver, it's not always about that turn between being someone who's incredibly charming and someone who reveals their true hand about who they are. It's not just about what they communicate via dialogue. It's with Oliver, as you say, he can just, the way he moves his mouth or the way he might raise an eyebrow reveals a whole other layer to who he is. And it can be as much about the unspoken. I think a big part of The Invisible Man and the chilling nature of this story is about what is not spoken, and that can be as scary about what is spoken as well. Leigh was very clear from the very beginning that he wanted Aldis to play James in this film. I think that was the actor that he always had in mind for this role, and someone that was a really great foil for the character Cecilia. While she's kind of spinning out of control and thinking her reality is kind of falling down around her, he's this kind of steady ship in the night. And that's very much what Aldis brings to that role. He's the steady ship, he's the steady hand, he's the kind of strong emotional resonance for her.
So Cecilia Kass is the main character, and I wanted someone who was a strong woman, very talented, capable person, had been a promising architecture student. I wanted her to be someone with her whole life in front of her who was suddenly cut short by a relationship. By getting into the wrong relationship, her whole life was put on pause. And she found herself in this really controlling situation where she was stifled as a human being and couldn't do anything. She was suffocated by her partner. And so she escapes from that situation. And I wanted her to find her strength throughout the movie. You know, it's always interesting to me in a movie when somebody who appears to be a bit frail or a bit weak compared to the forces against them finds the strength, like finds those reserves of strength. I mean, it's a classic movie story, a classic story in general. And that was what interested me about her character, was seeing somebody who didn't really believe in themselves or have confidence in themselves get stronger. I think that this is someone who's very controlling and who is always used to getting what they want and dictating the terms of what they want. And I think for Adrian, it just kills him that Cecilia would leave him, that someone would defy him in that way. And he has this really strong pathological need to control her. And so that's definitely what's driving him throughout the film. This character called James, played by Aldis Hodge, who is someone she's living with. She feels like she's imposing on him just by crashing on his couch. And she tries to take care of James's daughter, Sydney, who's played by Reid. And it was like another family for her. And they're kind of a point of good in the movie, you know. And it was really important to have that other perspective on what she was going through. I knew that a lot of the time I wanted to do things practically in this movie. I knew that it was a lack of visual effects that would make it special, like just pointing the camera at an empty room. You know, the emptiness is the special effect. Or more accurately, the audience's imagination is the special effect. What the audience can fill in the blanks with is incredible. You know, they can conjure up in their mind something far more terrifying than you can physically conjure up. I just thought it would look unique to see a fight scene between two people, only one of those people is invisible. And I just felt like I hadn't seen that too often, and it was exciting. So it was a real combination of practical effects with Lizzie in a harness being dragged around the kitchen. Then we have someone in a green suit that has to be painted out later. Then we have this motion control camera. Then we have practical stunts like tables flying on, and it was almost a mixture of all the different elements of filmmaking, all to achieve this one effect.
I always imagine, you know, the idea of young kids traumatizing bugs or, you know, animals. And I imagine that Tom was that for Adrian, that he just terrorized him, and now they've grown up and they're still kind of doing the same thing. I like the merging of two genres. Having an old sort of classic story, you know, The Invisible Man, with themes that have sort of been, we've seen as audiences time and time again. But I guess it was the way that this script had a bit of a spin on it. It made it current, had this technological aspect to it that was kind of plausible. And that made it exciting to me that, you know, potentially we're not far from this kind of thing taking place. It has an element of truth to it. And the psychological element, the suspense. I love suspense. I had such a great time working with Elisabeth on The Invisible Man. She's the master of suspense. She can turn any emotion on It's like a tap, turning on a tap. Just really, really brilliant to watch. When I first did rehearsals with her, I knew that we were going to have a bit of fun, you know, playing back and forth.
To me, it's a very human and relatable story. I love taking this larger, more fantastical idea of a man who is invisible and terrorizing this woman, something that is seemingly impossible and something that is, you know, either sci-fi or horror, whatever it is, and marrying that with an incredibly human story of a woman who is trying to recover who she was and trying to find her voice and trying to speak out about something and not be judged for it or hit for it, whether literally or metaphorically. And I think that, to me, that the marriage of those two in this film is what I love about it and what I'm proud of. I am kind of attracted to characters that are believe in something against all odds, and Cecilia, that thing in her that just won't give up on the idea that this is true, and she is going to find him, and she's going to prove that it's true. I just think is really compelling and inspiring. There's James, played by Aldis Hodge, and he is an old friend. He's a police officer. She's who she goes to when she escapes Adrian and the relationship in Adrian's house. And he kind of takes her in. And it's all arranged, you know. Her sister picks her up, played by Harriet Dyer, and she takes her to James's house. Sydney is there, who's played by Reid, and that is a safe space for her. That is a place that she is able to hopefully be recovering from this abusive relationship. And unfortunately, it ends up becoming a nightmare in itself. She works in architecture. She has a degree, you know, she's successful, ambitious, loves what she does. She's a person who, you know, studied in Paris, and she actually had a life and a personality of her own. Once she gets into the relationship with Adrian, that is slowly chipped away at, psychologically, emotionally, and physically, until she doesn't know who she is anymore. She's only what he wants her to be. Whether it's the way that she looks or the way that she talks, the way that she acts, whatever it is, she is purely there to be of service to him. And he kind of cuts her off from everybody, and she's alone. And it's very, very common in abusive relationships or toxic relationships. And so coming out of that, she's a very different person. She's very damaged and fragile and pretty broken and terrified. And she starts out that way, and then it just kind of gets worse. I mean, Leigh and I are tremendous fans of this genre. We both love it and love to be scared and love that feeling, and we wanted to do justice to that. I always kind of wanted to do a really good horror film, a really good scary movie. And this was so the perfect one because it actually had like a very interesting story that I was really attracted to. But I remember saying to each other on our first phone call, we were like, the number one thing is this has to be scary. One of the things Leigh wanted to do, which I loved, was he put in all the little horror tropes. So, you know, when the medicine cabinet opens and then it closes and you expect somebody to be back there. We did all of that, except there's nobody there. Like, did the same thing with the refrigerator door. Everything, then put all these little tricks in, but it doesn't actually happen. But building that suspense was really, really fun. We did the classic, like, walking down the hallway scene, one shot, you know, where the camera comes around and you've seen the door closed previously, and when the camera comes around, now the door's open. Like, that kind of stuff was so much fun to do. Just loud noises, you know, things like that, like turning on a light in a dark room and revealing that shape in the corner is actually a coat rack. All that stuff that you see in horror movies was so fun to actually just be a part of.
That is a little bit lower, and then go just to the bottom of the matte box, mate.
I'm below the matte box. And Mark.
Get up and run at that part of the window. Like, don't obscure, run at this part of the window. And kind of have your head down so that when you land, your face is right in the window.
So like that.
Yeah, exactly.
Open the door! Open the door! Open!
As long as you get to something that's good.
It's like, you know, the...
It's getting too jammed up with that beautiful sign, but in there.
Too technical.
He's not dead, and I can prove it.
How?
I went to his house today.
To his house.
Is just that last, like it's made the cameras in it. Is, Cut. Awesome.
I shouldn't have walked out and left you alone.
And you see the invisible man. You don't need to be doing this.
Yeah.
And set.
Action!
Hey!
No! No! Please! No!
And action.
Charlie Marker.
Oh, you like that? Yeah. Okay, good. Oh, glad we did it then.
Like you still have the ability of trying to stick you into the
Totally.
36 frames.
And Mark.
Set.
And background, and action.
You want some water?
The messier it looks, the better for camera when you're just like, do you know what I mean? Like getting out of there as fast as you can.
I'm sorry, I'm just not. I'm not ready yet.
That's okay. So, hey, that's the furthest you've gone since you've been here. So as far as I'm concerned, you just walked on the moon.
Okay. No.
Okay, have it. Do one of those that's a bit more dead inside, like he doesn't even have anger, he's just dead.
Still rolling and
Stop.
Set.
And action.
So just like fight a bit there.
Yeah.
And then he's gonna, yeah. And he's gonna turn you and jump on you as you go to sit up. So you try to get up, you try and get away. Oh, and then he throws you back down. And like, have you got
Can do those, knock them off.
3, 2, 1, go!
On 30, take 4.
Delta 123 Alpha, take 1.
A really good height too, because you can just see your eyes and like your nose, and then once you've looked around, start to pull yourself up.
So when the audience is introduced to James and Cecilia, this is at a point where Cecilia is going through, you know, this sort of, she's dealing with the aftermath of her experience, you know, having been in the relationship she was in, the abusive relationship she was in. So James is really just trying to help her out. He's really trying to be there, be a good friend to her. You know, I think being a police officer, he has an empathetic sense about these things, so he might be a little bit, you know, confident coming to this, thinking that he's well-equipped to do the job, not knowing what he's about to step into. A really key element I think that Leigh has tapped into the personal, you know, level is with Cecilia, he gets to exhibit this woman who is really finding her own strength, you know, coming out of a rough situation, having to challenge it head on, and then she has to figure out who she is in that space. And she has to fight for herself through it. And that's what I love. I love stories about fighters and people who really have to dig down deep inside of themselves and challenge the biggest fear that I think we all have, which is ourselves. It's nothing external, it's always internal. And that's something that Cecilia has to do, is get to a place where she really understands. I mean, she's going through something that nobody can understand. It's just her. She's alone. And that loneliness is crippling, but some way she figures out how to really fight for who she is and what she wants out of this. And I think it's a beautiful thing to see. It's a really cool way to show it, too, with the fact that we're doing this, you know, horror, action, thriller type of thing. So when the audience sees it, I feel like they're going to have a lot of fun watching it, but at the same time, they're going to kind of get to appreciate the idea of personal inner strength. Our fight scenes are insane because of the way that Leigh is shooting them. Stunt team is crazy, but visually, his camera movements, his style, and you'll see it when you see the film, but I think that is what people are really going to take away from this being different, because of the way it just comes off visually is something that I have never seen before in the horror or thriller genre. Elisabeth Moss, she's awesome. You know, obviously fan of her prior work. You know, it's really cool because she's so dialed into this character, Cecilia. She really understands what it is. And then, like, even the other day we were shooting a scene and she wanted to add a little something to make it just that much creepier, and it actually, it worked. So she's really, I think, locked into what journey this character is on from start to finish. And obviously she's the perfect person to play this role. You know, Storm, she's so smart, she's dialed in, she's very respectful and mannerable, and she's also very aware and doesn't take anything for granted. She's not, you know, like the, you know, spoiled diva too, none of that. You know, she really understands, you know, where she's at, and it's really great to see because she's so young and then so successful in the game, but all I can see is just the future going up, up, up for her. And it's really impressive to see, and it's refreshing. So, and she's a great actress as well. So I'm really happy and also honored to be working with her.